Desperate dad shares his last meal with weeping kids, then one whispers, "You're my only hope." The dim kitchen flickered with the last of the evening light, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. Mike sat at the table, head in his hands. Tension wrapped around him like a vice. He looked up at his two children, Clara and Jake, their faces pale and smeared with tears. Tonight was supposed to be a big family dinner, a celebration of sorts, but instead, it twisted into something dark and heavy. This wasn't just a meal, it was desperation coated in fear. Across the table, Clara clutched a spoon, her tiny fingers trembling. Jake, always the strong one, fell silent, fighting back the sobs that threatened to spill over. Their stomachs grumbled, but the fridge stood empty, mocking them with its emptiness. The smell of burnt beans lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of yesterday's failure. Mike reached for the last of the stale bread, tearing it in half, not wanting to show just how much they were running low. This was it, their last meal before the light snuffed out completely. Suddenly, Clara looked up, her eyes wide and shimmering. "Daddy, is there really nothing left?" she whispered, her voice like a fragile glass ready to shatter. It was a question filled with more than hunger, it was a plea, a prayer wrapped in uncertainty. Mike's heart tightened. How does a father tell his kids that there was no way out? His throat felt like sandpaper as he replied, "We'll find something, sweetheart. I promise." The tension thickened until it felt suffocating. Just then, Jake leaned closer, his voice barely audible over the silence. "Dad, we can't eat the promise anymore." That hit like a punch. Mike's heart sank. The truth was too much to bear. His children were looking at him, their wide eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. They needed him to be strong, but all he felt was helplessness. As they ate their meager portions, laughter from a neighbor's house drifted in, a cold reminder of what they had lost, what they could no longer share. Jake's lips quivered, and just when Mike thought he would cry, Jake leaned over and whispered, "You're my only hope." Those words hung in the air like a ticking bomb. What could he say to that? How could he face the reality of their situation? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The kitchen fell silent except for the echo of their mismatched breaths. Mike felt the weight of their words pressing down on him. How does a father hold the shards of hope together when his own heart feels like it's crumbling? He glanced out the window, the dark street beyond presenting a void, empty houses, flickering porch lights, lives untouched by their suffering. Just then, a flicker caught his attention. A shadow moved, shifting unnaturally in the dusk. Was it a trick of the light? Mike squinted, heart racing. Who was out there? As he turned back to his kids, the unease gnawed at him. What if he couldn't protect them? The world outside seemed darker than ever. And as Clara rested her head against his side, the thought burrowed in, was this the end, or just the beginning of something more terrifying? The room felt heavy, the darkness pooling like a thick fog around them. Mike's heart raced as he strained to decipher the shadow lurking outside. Was it a trick of his tired mind? Or was someone watching them, lurking right in the safety of their vulnerability? Swallowing hard, he forced a smile for Clara, but it felt plastered on, a facade barely held together by hope. "Let us finish our dinner," Mike said, managing to inject a little cheerfulness into his voice. "After that, we'll read a story, all right?" Clara nodded, but her eyes were still glued to the window. Did she sense it too? That wall of dread creeping upon them, like an intruder in their own home? Jake stared at the table, his expression lost in a web of thoughts harder than any meal they could share. Mike hated feeling helpless, hated that his promises felt empty, just like their bowls. As they munched on the stale bread, the eerie silence surrounded them once more. Was it unnatural, or did even the world outside hold its breath? Just then, there was a loud knock at the door. The sound reverberated, leaving an echo of dread in its wake. Mike's blood turned cold. Who could that be? "Stay here," he whispered urgently to his children, then made his way to the door, trying to quell the panic rising in his chest. His hands trembled as he reached for the doorknob. Could this be a person come to help, or someone looking to exploit their misery? He hesitated, listening for another sound, another hint of what awaited him on the other side. "Dad?" Clara's voice broke through, filled with worry. "Who is it?" "I don't know, honey." He stole a quick glance back at them. Clara looked terrified, gripping the table for dear life. Jake stood taller, his small body seemingly preparing to shield his sister. It broke Mike's heart to see them like this. With a deep breath, he turned the knob and pulled the door open. Standing there was a man, disheveled, with an urgency in his wild eyes that sent a jolt of fear through Mike. "Please," the stranger gasped, "I need your help." "Help?" Mike echoed, his heart racing. "What do you want?" "We don't have anything." The man looked desperate, glancing back at the street as if fearing what would come next. "You don't understand. They are coming. You have to." Suddenly, a loud engine roared to life outside. The sound tore through the night, slicing through the tension that infected the air. Mike's heart thudded painfully against his chest. Who is coming?" "Everyone." The man shouted, panic rising in his voice. "They'll take everything from you. I saw them. They're moving through the neighborhood, and they won't stop until they get what they want." At that moment, the wheels in Mike's mind began to churn. "What do you mean? What do they want?" But before the stranger could answer, another figure darted past, cloaked in shadows, sprinting for safety. "Run!" the man screamed, before pushing past Mike and racing out into the night. "Dad!" Jake shouted, and Mike whipped around to see fear etched on both of his children's faces. He ushered them back inside, heart racing as uncertainty gripped him like a vice. "Get away from the windows now." Just then, the front porch light flickered ominously, illuminating the street outside. A second engine growled to life, reverberating through the stillness. What was happening? This was no ordinary night. The shadows had teeth, and they were coming for them. Mike felt his lungs constrict as he gathered his children close. "I'll protect you," he whispered fiercely, even as the world beyond spiraled into chaos. But could he? Could he fend off whatever dark force was battering on their doorstep? In that uncertain moment, the flickering porch light went out completely. Darkness engulfed them. What were they truly up against? And would Mike find the strength to shield his family from whatever nightmares lurked just beyond the walls? The darkness swallowed them whole, stolen breaths mingling with whispers of fear. The house was a sanctuary, yet it felt like a cage, trapping them inside as the world outside threatened to shatter their fragile safety. Mike ushered Clara and Jake further back into the dim, cramped kitchen, his heart a thunderous drumbeat echoing in his ears. "Stay close," he commanded softly, pulling them beneath the low table, wrapping his arms around their trembling bodies. The walls seemed to close in as he fought to keep his own panic at bay. They huddled there, listening, hearts racing, waiting for a sound, a footstep, a shout, something to indicate the nature of the threat looming just beyond their door. Suddenly, the power grid shuddered back to life, the porch light flickering once more, casting eerie shadows that danced across the room. Mike's eyes darted toward the window, scanning the street beneath the pale light. Nothing. Just empty darkness where the world used to live. "Dad, what is happening?" Clara's tiny voice, barely more than a whisper, trembled as she pressed her small body into him. "I don't know, sweetheart, I don't know," he replied, feeling completely stripped of authority as a wave of guilt washed over him. All he had given them was quiet dread. He had promised them safety, yet here they were, clinging together like driftwood caught in a tempest. Outside, the engine roared again, louder this time, and the ground vibrated beneath them as a second vehicle approached. Mike's instinct screamed. "We have to get out of here." He turned to grab the phone on the table, but his hands were shaking too badly to focus. A sudden crash interrupted his thoughts, a shattering sound from the front door as if it were made of paper. Adrenaline surged through him, fear turned to an icy resolve. "Stay here, don't move." He threw a quick glance at Jake and Clara, and their faces were mirrors of horror, frozen in time, but he had no choice that he sprinted to the front room, the fateful door now splintered under the relentless assault of unseen intruders. "Who is there?" he called, forcing bravado into his voice, wishing for the strength of a lion protecting its cubs. The door creaked ominously as something on the other side pushed against it. "Dad!" Jake's shout pierced through the heavy atmosphere, straining with desperation. Heart hammering, Mike gritted his teeth and pushed against the door to brace it. Panic melted into raw determination. "Get back!" he yelled, his own mind racing through a dozen worst-case scenarios. Was it one of them? Could it be help gone wrong, or were they surrounded by something far worse? Then, out of the shadows emerged a silhouette, a familiar figure trapped in the light spilling through the narrow crack. It was the frantic man who had warned him earlier, wild-eyed and panting. "You have to listen. They're coming, they'll come for you next." Before Mike could respond, other figures flanked him, silhouetted against the pulse of the dying street light. The man turned to run, but not before locking eyes with Mike, a look of desperation cascading shadows down his face. "Don't trust anyone," he shouted, just as the figures lunged towards them, a mass of shadows spilling through the doorframe. Mike felt a scream clawing up his throat. "Clara! Jake! Now!" He yanked them into motion as they fled toward the back door. But what awaited them there? Would the darkness swallow them whole, or was there a chance of escape? Outside the walls of their home, the weight of dread tightened like a noose. Mike fought to see beyond the swirling shadows as they moved, but terror threatened to cloud his judgment. Could they outrun whatever hunted them? Would they find safety, or merely a different kind of nightmare waiting in the dark? The unknown loomed ahead, each heartbeat closer to the moment they would face it. What horrors awaited them outside, and could they truly escape the growing tide? The back door creaked open, the chilling wind slicing through the air like a knife. Mike propelled Clara and Jake ahead of him, forcing them into the murky yard. The night seemed alive with whispers, rustling leaves and distant thuds echoing like a drumbeat of doom. He could feel their breath quicken, panic palpable in the air around them. "Stay by my side," he murmured, his voice strained but firm. They nodded, eyes wide with fear, and in that moment, he saw a reflection of his own terror mirrored in their gazes. Then came the sound, a heavy footfall, crunching through the gravel behind them. Mike glanced back, heart pounding. Shadows loomed, shifting like phantoms dancing in the dark. No time to question it. They had to move. But where? The road ahead stretched into uncharted darkness, a yawning abyss hiding who or what lay in waiting. Fleeting thoughts ricocheted in his mind. Should they run? Hide? Any choice felt like a roll of the dice in a game rigged against them. Mike grabbed Clara's arm. Her small fist clutched tightly around Jake's. "Towards the trees," he whispered, pointing into the thickets that lined the edge of their property. He would rather take his chances there than risk meeting whatever was behind them, hunger thrumming in its chest. As they sprinted, the silhouettes twisted behind them, their outlines growing sharper and more menacing with every stride. Clara stumbled, nearly tripping over the roots that gnarled like claws at the ground. Mike caught her, pulling her up as adrenaline surged like fire through his veins. "We can't stop," he urged. She swallowed hard, nodding, her eyes glistening with the shimmer of unshed tears. They darted deeper into the trees, branches scraping against them like skeletal fingers. There, among that warren of shadows, they could hide. But the question pressed down on him: how long could they stay hidden when darkness itself seemed to hunt them? He found a thick bush a makeshift refuge. Pressing both kids into its embrace, he crouched low, listening, praying for silence. The shadows passed with elongated limbs, searching the ground. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, every breath a risk. Mike's mind raced through their options. They couldn't stay there forever. Morning would come, and with it, daylight's reveal of their plight. Clara snuggled closer to him, the warmth of her tiny body, a stark contrast to the cold terror gripping his heart. "Dad, what if they find us?" she whispered, her quivering voice cutting through the stillness that he hushed her gently, finger to his lips. "If they find us, we fight. We don't give up, no matter what. Okay?" Jake's eyes widened. "But Dad, what if—" "Jake," Mike interrupted, "we're okay. Just focus on me." He wasn't sure how long they could keep the facade of bravery. Every second felt like a thief pilfering his resolve. Suddenly, a shrill scream tore through the night, followed by frantic laughter echoing like a bizarre symphony. It sliced into the darkness, and Mike's heart plummeted. Was this another family in peril? Or had the hunters turned cruel? He peered through the leaves, the silhouettes moving again, coalescing in the eerie light filtering through the trees. "What if they catch someone else?" Jake whispered, his voice barely above a breath. At that moment, the ominous laughter crescendoed, filling the air with a twisted sense of joy. Mike gripped Clara's shoulder, the heat of his hand a tether to reality. They had to get out. But where would they run? With each new echo, dread thickened the air around them, drawing ever closer. Would they be swallowed by the night, or was there still a chance to break free? As silence fell, he felt a chill creeping deeper under his skin. A rustle nearby snapped him back, eyes wide, pulse racing. He cast a glance towards the sound. The darkness began to shift. What emerged from the shadows next would change everything. The shadows twisted, coiling like serpents around the trees, and Mike held his breath, straining to glimpse what lurked just beyond his sight. The rustling grew louder, accompanied by a low growl that vibrated through the ground like an earthquake. Clara clutched his arm, her little fingers trembling, and he could feel Jake's heartbeat thudding against his back. "Dad," Jake whimpered, fear thick in his voice. "What's that?" "Just stay still," Mike urged, his voice barely above a whisper. He fought against the rising panic, but adrenaline surged through him, urging him to do something, anything to protect his children. A figure emerged, gliding through the shadowed underbrush. It was tall and impossibly thin. The moon caught the contours of its face, a grotesque mask of sharp angles and hollow eyes. The laughter from earlier had faded, replaced by a chilling silence, as if the night itself was holding its breath. "Don't move," Mike cautioned, voice trembling. He forced himself to stay steady. Any sudden movement could draw the creature's attention. The figure paused, its head tilting slightly as if it sensed their presence. Then, it turned and took a step forward, each footfall deliberate, echoing in the stillness like a heartbeat. Mike's heart raced in tandem, pounding violently against his ribcage. Suddenly, Clara let out a small whimper. It was a sound of pure fear, so vulnerable it cracked through the thick tension that enveloped them. Mike shot her a glare, desperately urging her to stay quiet. The creature's attention snapped to them, its gaze piercing through the leaves, locking onto Clara's wide, terrified eyes. "Shh," Mike whispered, but it felt futile. The creature advanced another step, its long fingers stretching toward them like they were nothing but prey. Then, just as it loomed closer, a screech pierced the night, a sound so raw, so horrifying, that Mike felt a cold sweat break out across his skin. The creature hesitated, its focus wavering, as its sharp features twisted into an expression of anger or frustration. It turned its gaze away, glancing into the deeper shadows of the woods, where more rustling erupted, echoing the sound of chaos. Mike saw his chance and gripped the kids tighter. "Now! We run!" he hissed. They bolted, crashing through the underbrush with wild abandon. Every snap of a twig beneath their feet was a death knell, every branch lashed out at them, becoming their enemies as they fled deeper into the trees. The horrors of the night crept ever closer, their steps fell in heavy pursuit, chasing them like a wraith determined to catch its prey. There was no plan now, just motion. They dodged and weaved, the trees blurring past them, unrelenting shadows pressing in from all sides. Just as Mike thought they were gaining ground, a screech rang out behind them, hunger laced within it, echoing into the night like a warning. "Dad!" Clara cried, her voice quaking, tearing at Mike's resolve. I can't breathe. Just hold on. We're almost there." He shouted back, though he had no idea where there was. Only the instinct to run kept them propelling forward. For a split second, he wished for a flashlight, a beacon to cut through the darkness. Instead, they were surrounded by black, the trees began to thin. It was a glimmer of hope, but with it came the realization that they were too far from safety. He could see the outline of the old barn in the distance. It creaked and moaned in the breeze, but would it offer sanctuary or trap them further? As they closed in on the barn, the shadows behind them rose like a tide, malevolent and undeterred. Something surged in Mike's chest, an instinctual will to protect that had grown sharper through the fear. "Follow me," he yelled, dashing toward the doors, heart racing with the frantic pulse of impending danger. They reached the barn just as the monster's laughter echoed behind them again, chilling his blood. Mike threw open the door, his heart pounding, but then he stopped short. The dark interior clutched at him like a living entity. Shadows loomed heavily, and the corners of the barn seemed to pulse with something lurking, something waiting. Heavy footsteps thundered behind him, and he stepped inside hesitantly, like crossing a threshold into a nightmare that could very well be their last refuge, but just then, right at the edge of his vision, he caught a glimmer of fleeting motion. This time, it wasn't just the shadows moving. Was it the way out? Or was it a lure into something far worse? Clara squeezed his arm tighter, and Mike felt the weight of helplessness crashing down on him. The choice loomed over them like the terrifying specter of the unknown: forward into darkness, or back to face the nightmare behind. Time stretched, silence hung thick, and the next choice would be the most crucial one. What would happen next? Mike's breath quickened as he peered into the dark maw of the barn, the shadows shifting and swirling like angry spirits. The glimmering motion he saw deep inside seemed nothing more than a figment, a cruel trick played by the fear that wrapped around them, almost choking. "Maybe it's a way out," he murmured, more to himself than to the kids. But doubt gnawed at his insides even as he tugged them forward. "Or maybe it's worse," Jake whispered, fear straining in his voice. Mike's heart sank at the thought. Torn between the terror chasing them and the unknown waiting inside, he took a deep breath. The laughter of the creature echoed in his mind, a chilling symphony of chaos, driving him to act. "We go in. Now." He pushed them first, into the suffocating blackness of the barn. The air felt damp and cold against their skin, clinging like a shroud. Clara squeezed his hand tighter, her small frame trembling. "Stay close," he instructed, unwilling to lose grip on them in the engulfing gloom. They crept forward, stepping on uneven ground as they ventured further into the barn's depths. Suddenly, a loud thud reverberated from behind. The barn door shuddered under a pounding force, shaking bones and sanity alike. Mike whirled around, the adrenaline boiling in his veins. The noise escalated, and he locked eyes with Clara and Jake, their faces lit with panic. "Daddy, what's happening?" Clara sobbed, her voice quivering like a fragile leaf in a storm. "Stay quiet. Don't move." He dropped to a crouch, dragging his kids down with him, hoping their silhouette would fade into the barn's shroud. The sound of scratching scraped against wood and stone, a maddening reminder that something was outside, and it longed for them. Each breath felt heavier as Mike tried to control the rush of dread coursing through him. He scanned the dark corners. Shadows pirouetted across the walls, every flicker in the dim light felt alive, their very essence threatening to snatch them away. "Look!" Jake suddenly gasped, pointing ahead. In the dim light filtering through cracks in the barn, where the hay lay thick with dust, something moved. A small door, lower to the ground, partially ajar. It was just wide enough for them to fit through. An out. Or a trap. Fear battled desperation within him. "We should over there." Clara sobbed, pointing in the opposite direction. "It's coming." Mike's heart pounded. The heavy footsteps grew louder, crashing like thunder against his ears. Without thinking, he raced toward the little door, pulling his children after him. The laughter outside swelled, and he could feel the sinister eyes of the creature creeping closer. Quick! Before it finds us! He thrust the door open wider, heart racing as he huddled them through one after the other. As they slipped inside, a hand grabbed Mike's belt, yanking him back. He stumbled, panic flaring in his chest, half turned to face the horror he had tried to escape. Go! He yelled, pushing the children forward with every ounce of strength and love he had, the grip on his belt losing its hold. Clara and Jake darted through the narrow space into the night beyond, and Mike, with one final glance back into the abyss, felt the last inklings of hope slip through his fingers. When he turned to follow, the door slammed shut, trapping him in darkness. What had he done? He was alone now. The darkness whispered, closing in, and the laughter grew louder, echoing like an ominous tune. Mike felt his chest tighten, each breath growing more labored. True panic wrapped around him. He was trapped, and the shadows were alive, creeping closer, hungry for the fear that perfumed the air. As the laughter crescendoed, echoing with the promise of doom, Mike needed to find a way out. There had to be something, but was there a way back to his children? And just as he thought all was lost, a voice broke through the thick veil of darkness. Help me. Who was it? The shadows whispered back, weaving secrets in the folds of the night. Was it friend or foe? The stakes had risen, and a choice awaited him. Would he face the darkness again, or would he find something far worse? Mike's heart raced at the voice, a haunting mix of hope and terror echoing through the palpable darkness. Help me. The phrase dragged his thoughts through the swirling dread, clawing at remnants of his courage. Who was trapped in the shadows with him? Clara? Jake? He whispered, but silence wrapped around him like a thick fog. Desperation clawed at his throat. Is anyone there? His voice trembled, ricocheting off the wooden beams, taunting him, reminding him of his solitude. Help me, it came again, softer this time, almost muffled, lost in the churning blackness. Something deep within himself stirred, a flicker of protectiveness igniting in the cold abyss. Where are you? He dared to ask, inching forward despite the clammy chill that settled over his skin. The air felt different now, charged with a suffocating tension. He could feel something watching him, lurking in the corners of the barn. Squeezing his eyes shut for a moment, he fought the panic rising within him. What do you want? He called, bracing for whatever might slither from the shadows. The laughter of the creature was a haunting reminder of the danger lying just beyond his reach. Help me please, the voice grew clearer, tinged with a child's desperation. It struck a chord deep in his heart, overflowing his mind with vivid memories of Clara and Jake, vulnerable, sweet, innocent, and depending on him. No! He shouted, shaking off fear and lunging forward. He couldn't give in. With every ounce of resolve, he swallowed the rising bile of terror and pressed onward into the dark. I'm coming. The shadows shivered as he moved, a rippling wave of malice enveloping him. Suddenly, he felt the ground shift beneath him. A loose board creaked ominously with his weight. Before he could register it, the board tilted, and he found himself tumbling down into a hidden pit, landing with a thud on hard earth. Ugh! The wind knocked from his lungs. He gasped, bracing for impact. Pain shot through his leg. Pushing himself to sit up, the air was cooler down here, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the barn above. Daddy! Clara's voice pierced through the darkness, panic rising with each note. A spotlight of relief began to shine through the storm surrounding him, but he needed to find her, to find Jake. Clara? Jake? He called out, his voice echoing in the small space. He strained to hear any sign of life, but only silence greeted him, heavy and suffocating. A flicker of movement caught his eye. A small figure stepped into the dimness, illuminated by a faint glowing light. Help me, the voice called again, but this time it was unmistakably different. Who are you? Mike demanded, adrenaline rushing through him. The figure wore tattered clothes, wild hair, eyes wide with unbearable anguish. Haunted memories flooded him, the look of fear in Clara's eyes, the innocence of their laughter, the way they had clung to him just moments before. He hesitated, caught in a moment of startling vulnerability. "Where are Clara and Jake? Please tell me." The apparition stepped closer, illuminating further shadows that danced along the rocky walls. "They're in danger." A sickening churn twisted in Mike's stomach. "What do you know? What if this was another trap?" His instincts screamed to flee, yet somewhere deep, a spark of belief flickered. Was this child here to save him or lead him to something worse? The figure locked eyes with him, a gaze colder than the relentless night. "You are their only hope," it whispered, and as it spoke, Mike felt the ground tremble beneath them, a monstrous growl rumbling from the darkness. Suddenly, the laughter returned, more sinister than ever, pulling him back into the chaos. Shadows writhed, longing for him, as the walls of the pit began to shift. "Run!" the figure yelled, urgency seeping into each word. Would he trust this spectral child, or was it one more step toward lost hope? He felt the choice rip through him like a blade. Would he chase this glimmer of assistance or abandon whatever it was in search of his children? Which way? He roared, knowing he needed to act fast as a shadow swung down, ready to engulf him whole. The moment had come, but what would he choose? Mike felt the urge to act surge through him, but doubt held him in place. The child's urgent plea melted away his hesitation. His heart pounded as the shadows crept closer, their tendrils reaching for him with a dreadful hunger. "Where?" he shouted again, shaking off the fear that constricted his throat. "Follow me," the figure cried, its voice now a ghostly echo that pulled at Mike's soul. He took a hesitant step towards it, feeling the cool air wrapping around him like a forgotten promise. The trembling ground roared with discontent, urging him to run. The child began to move, darting ahead, the faint light casting an otherworldly glow on the walls of the pit. Mike sprinted after it, knee-jerk terror coursing through his veins, his leg aching with every stride. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when Clara and Jake might be in danger. "Stay close," he yelled, scrambling deeper into the narrowing tunnel. He could barely see, only shadows danced before him, twisting and writhing like broken memories. Panic wrapped around him tightly as his mind raced with images of his children. Are they scared? Alone? The child paused, glancing back, its gaze pleading. "We don't have much time." A deep rumble echoed from behind. It was as if the earth itself protested their presence. Terrifying shadows surged forth, feasting on the child's light. Mike felt raw fear clawing at his insides. "No!" he shouted, pushing himself to run harder. "Just a little further," it shouted, darting around a corner. The glow illuminated a sliver of hope. Mike's breath heaved in his chest as he pushed through the darkness, desperation fueling every frantic step. Suddenly, the tunnel opened up into a larger chamber, a chilling tableau of stone walls slick with moisture and desperation. And then he saw them, Clara and Jake huddled together against the far wall. Relief crashed over him like a wave, but it was quickly swept away by the sinister laughter that followed him. "Daddy!" Clara screamed, her voice laced with the sharp agony of fear. "They're safe." The apparition gasped, lifting an arm to illuminate the space. "But you have to hurry." A threaded beam of light flickered and illuminated the children's terrified faces. Mike rushed forward, kneeling beside them, enveloping them in his arms. "I'm here. I'm here," he whispered, his heart a cacophony of hope and dread. "Daddy, it's so dark," Jake sobbed, burrowing closer to him. "I know, buddy, but we need to get out." He turned to the figure, fear tightening in his chest. "How do we escape?" "Not all paths lead up." The child responded cryptically, the shadows creeping ever closer. The room began to shake violently, stones clattering to the ground as cracks began to form in the walls. The voices were drawing near, relentless and haunting. What do you mean? Mike shouted, panic edging his voice. Follow the light. The child insisted, pointing toward a faint glow shimmering on the opposite wall. But it was dimming, fading like a dream at dawn. For a split second, Mike hesitated. Two paths lay before him. One clung to them, to flee to the safety they desperately needed. The other, to trust the words of this spectral figure. Was it truly a guide, or a trick? But the laughter echoed mockingly, urging him to choose. Can we make it? Panic laced through his question. Trust me. The child's voice cracked, heavy with urgency as the terrible laughter grew. The shadows lunged forward like hungry beasts. Let us go. Mike shouted, dragging Clara and Jake to their feet. They stumbled behind him, his heart racing like a drum as their small hands clung to him tightly. What choice would they make, and would it be enough? As they neared the flickering light, the air thick with malice, Mike felt the ground beneath him start to twist and tremble. Doubt gripped him once more. What if the light was a trap? But Clara's grip tightened around his hand. Daddy, he looked down at her, knowing he couldn't falter now. Hold on tight. He roared, pushing forward as shadows reached out, hungry for his family. Would they escape this time, or had they entered a nightmare from which there was no return? The moment had come to confront the darkness, but what awaited them on the other side? The ground shuddered violently beneath them, making every step feel like they were running through quicksand. Mike's heart raced, each beat a desperate call to safety. The shadows, now more alive than ever, swept forward, hungry for their fear, their despair. He could almost hear them whispering, sinister voices promising all kinds of horrors. Faster. He urged, pulling his children tighter against him. The flickering light seemed both enticing and mocking as it sputtered like a candle threatened by a draft. Daddy, I'm scared. Clara exclaimed, her grip feeling almost fragile in his hand. Tears streamed down her cheeks, glistening in the dim glow. I know. Just a little further. Mike's voice cracked with worry, the tension in his throat thick. As they rushed toward the light, a new sound emerged from behind, a low growl reverberated through the chamber. Panic clawed at Mike's chest, making it harder to breathe. It felt like the very walls were closing in, suffocating them with the weight of their dread. Please. Mike hollered, his voice more frantic. What's on the other side? Is it safe? The apparition's form flickered, wavering like the light that guided them. You must have faith. Trust the light. Faith? In what? In who? The frustration forced its way out of him. But the child only looked back, eyes filled with wisdom beyond its years. In hope and love it will guide you. A rush of cold air blew through the chamber, and for a moment, everything froze. The shadows wavered, as if unsure how to advance. The flickering light intensified, illuminating a pathway that wound like a serpent across the damp stone floor. We're almost there. Mike shouted, feeling resolve shift in him. They had no other choice, no alternative. He couldn't let his kids down again. Taking a deep breath, he surged forward, dragging Clara and Jake with him. A flash of darkness erupted behind them, an inky mist that thrashed and hissed, inching toward their heels. Run! Mike yelled, each footfall pounding harder against the stone as they raced toward the glimmering light. Its promise wrapped around him, urging him on, but the fear gnawed at his heart. Could a glimmer of light truly be a way out? Clara stumbled, her small legs faltering under the panic. Daddy! Without thinking, Mike scooped her into his arms. Jake didn't hesitate, running faster to keep up with them, adrenaline fueling his little body. Keep going. Mike cried, feeling the weight of two precious lives in his arms. He could feel the shadows on his back, like icy fingers touching his flesh, but he pressed on, each breath an act of defiance against the darkness. Then, just as they reached the edge of the light, Mike felt the ground shake violently beneath them. The shadows roared, pulling back as if resisting some unseen force. What's happening? He shouted, the tremors shaking his resolve. The darkness wants to keep you. It fears the light. You must believe. The figure screamed, its voice rising above the chaos. Suddenly, an unsettling silence engulfed them, the shadows frozen, as if holding their breath. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. Mike spun around, staring into the dark abyss that surrounded them, its presence palpable and heavy. All together. He urged, pulling Clara and Jake close. On the count of 3, let us run toward the light. Okay, Jake whispered, despite the terror clinging to his voice. 1, 2, 3. They bolted into the light, a torrent of hope and dread intertwining as they burst forward. The glow enveloped them, warm and fierce, but behind, the shadows writhed, furious and hungry. Was it enough? Or had they run into a trap? As they hurtled towards the brightness, a deafening crack echoed through the tunnel. Memories of laughter, sunlight and safety flickered in Mike's mind, but beside him, the shadows loomed, seeking to drag them back. What awaited them in the brilliance? Would it be redemption or doom? The answer lingered just beyond their reach, dancing like a promise on the brink of chaos. The luminescence enveloped them, a swirling embrace that cast away the shadows like a fading nightmare. Mike, Clara, and Jake surged forward, feet pounding against a solid surface that felt like safety. Then they tumbled out, gasping, into a world painted in the soft pastels of dawn. They landed on a grassy knoll, the sun breaking through the remnants of night like a battle-worn warrior returning to claim victory. Mike blinked at the bright sky, feeling warmth wrap around him like an old friend. It was a stark contrast to the darkness they'd just escaped, a reassuring promise that life could begin anew. Daddy? Clara's voice trembled, filled with the innocence he feared losing entirely. He turned to see her wide eyes, glistening with a mixture of confusion and relief. She was whole, unharmed. In her small hand, Jake clutched his sisters tightly, their bond more vital than ever. Mike pulled them close, holding both his children in an embrace stronger than any fear. We made it, he whispered, disbelief fluttering in his chest. He looked around, taking in the light pouring over them, illuminating their faces and washing away the suffocating dread they had endured. A chorus of birds sang nearby, cheerful notes dancing through the air. It felt almost unbelievable. Mike had spent so long gasping for hope, gripped by fear and dread, that now, breathing felt like a blessing. Where are we? Jake asked, glancing at the unfamiliar landscape. Rolling hills carpeted the ground, wildflowers dotting the vibrant green with bursts of color. It was serene, beautiful in a way he had long forgotten. I think we're safe now, Mike replied, though uncertainty still lingered in his heart. Part of him wondered if dawn would betray them, if shadows would creep back into their lives. But the laughter of children from a distance tugged at something deep inside him, joy, possibility, laughter untainted by fear. Can we stay here? Clara asked, her voice laced with hope. Yeah, Dad, Jake echoed. Can we just be free? Mike swallowed hard, the weight of the past beginning to lighten. We can try. We can start over. Just as those words left his lips, a figure approached, a woman with eyes bright like the sun and a smile that felt like home. She wore simple clothes, her hands calloused but strong. You're safe here, she said, her voice gentle as a summer breeze. We've been waiting for you. Those words sank deep into Mike's heart. They didn't just mean safety, they meant community, a place to belong. Who are you? He asked, his heart racing with anticipation. I'm someone who knows about shadows. People like you have faced their darkness and found a way back to the light. We can help you build a new life, she replied, stepping forward. His children nodded, eyes reflecting the hope blooming in their father's heart. They were ready for a future built on laughter, light, and love. Mike felt a flood of gratitude for this stranger and the promise she held. Together, they walked down the hill, their steps filled with newfound purpose. A sense of clarity pulsed through him. He would not let the shadows claim him again. They were stronger together, bound by love and the understanding that they could fight any battles ahead, armed with hope. As they reached the gathering of people, the laughter grew louder, each face radiating warmth and kindness. Mike felt a weight lift. This was not just an escape, it was a chance to thrive, a chance to heal, and as they stepped into this new chapter, Mike held Clara and Jake closer than ever. It was time to say goodbye to the fear, to embrace the light and all the possibilities it brought with it. The shadows were a part of their story, but they no longer defined them. He took a deep breath, letting in the beauty of this moment. "Let us go find our future," he said, and together, they stepped boldly into a brighter tomorrow. Now is the time to act. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. Let us connect, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring finale. Your support is what drives us forward. Let us make it happen together.